So I went to Europe. After flying from Norfolk to Atlanta, waiting on the runway in a storm, and getting 2 hours of sleep, I arrived in Brussels, Belgium. Our hotel sat on the plaza of St. Catherine, which was okay looking, I guess. We spent most of the weekend exploring Brussels. The first full day there, we walked through beautiful parks and gardens, saw the Royal Palace, visited Grand Place, and viewed the prized possession of Brussels, Mannequin Piss, which is literally just a statue of a peeing boy. When we returned home, the nudity was not yet over. Our weekend ended with a trip to the top of the Atomium, which gave us an awesome view of Brussels, and also overlooked our next destination, Mini Europe, which is literally just Mini Europe. We started classes and had a midweek trip to the tiny town of Bruges, which, upon further reflection, was one of my favorite things we did during the whole trip. We toured the city, took a canal tour, and climbed to the top of the Belfry for yet another gorgeous view of another gorgeous city. I spent the first weekend in Belgium, and some of us took a day trip to Antwerp, where there were an absurd amount of street performers, a beautiful cathedral, and a magnificent city center. The following week included class trips to Breendonk, a Nazi prison camp, and Henri Chapelle, an American World War II cemetery. Both days were rather sobering experiences, reminding me that World War II had a physical impact in Europe, and it wasn't just something that we learned about in textbooks. Then came a long train ride in 90-degree weather to Amsterdam, which upon further reflection was another one of my favorite things we did. The first thing we did was stand in line for 3 hours to get into the Anne Frank house, which I wasn't allowed to film in, but it was worth the wait. Then after a confusing tram ride, we came to the Van Gogh Museum, where I wasn't allowed to film either, but it was worth the confusing tram rides. That night, we ventured into the red light district and took a leisurely walk home, enjoying the cool night air and the twinkling lights on the canals. The next day involved lots of walking, but also lots of fun. We did a canal tour that showed us a lot of the city, but also made me fear a bit for my life as the boat driver crashed into a houseboat deck. But we survived, and visited the I Amsterdam letters, where I had some difficulties. But I survived, and we ended the night with a literal walk in the park. The next week of classes included trips to the US Embassy and the European Commission, which were very confusing because they both have lots of different things to do and it was hard to keep track of. But more importantly, we saw a double rainbow! After literally running to get on our bus to Germany, we stayed the night in Dusseldorf and took a day trip to Trier, where there were ancient Roman gates and cool fountains and pretty gardens and awesome street performers and so much walking. Then we spent Friday and Saturday nights in Cologne, where we saw the most massive cathedral I've ever seen in my life. I mean, seriously, look at this thing. There were so many gorgeous stained glass windows and like, who built this thing? But then there was also another boat tour and a fireworks festival, which was, you know, alright, I guess. The last week we spent finishing our presentations, but we also took a trip to the Chocolate Museum, which I didn't take any videos or pictures because I was too busy eating chocolate. I'm not kidding when I say that Belgian chocolate is the most delicious chocolate I've ever had in my life. We went to an urban farm too, where this goat clearly befriended me. We finished the week with a trip to Ghent where there were, you guessed it, more pretty old buildings and more pretty canals, and we accidentally also found a street parade. Our last night in Brussels consisted of wandering the city, watching street performers, singing Wonderwall with a drunk bachelor party, and saying goodbye to our good friend Kaya, the waffle maker. I took one last look out my window and said, "Good night, Brussels. Good night." The next morning at the airport, I got separated from the group while waiting for the plane and sat down somewhere to drink coffee and people watched. Always touch the outside of the plane for luck. I now present to you the weirdest safety video ever. Then we took off. So that is a very rough overview of what I did when I was in Europe for a month. I went there for a study abroad program that we have with the School for Communication and Anthropology, and taking those classes in a different culture really enhanced them. I couldn't imagine taking those classes not in a foreign country. I decided I wanted to tell more in-depth stories about what I did on my free travel weekends because, well, I like talking about myself. If you want to hear more about what I did on those free travel weekends, you can watch the other videos I made. What I did in Belgium, what I did in Amsterdam, and what I did in Germany. See ya!